Thank you, everybody. Let's call to order at 7:03. If you all rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Dr. Willett, do you have any acknowledgements?
No, we don't have any acknowledgements for that.
Okay, approval of the agenda, one note. Dr. Willett informed us that unfortunately our Shipwood and Goodwin representative is ill, as is most of her office. So she will not be here today, so we will be striking Superintendent's I-1 from the agenda. We'll reschedule that. I think you said the 10th is the target, right?
Yeah.
So that smile already. That being said, can I get a motion for the approval of December 13th minutes?
So moved.
Seconded. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll go with the roll call. Dana?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Brian? Aye. Rainey?
Aye.
Jaden?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Aye as well. Okay. We'll now move on to public participation. We don't have anybody on the Zoom, nor does it look like anybody in the audience is going to want to speak. So that being said, we'll move on to that. Okay, points of information. Would any of the board or superintendent like to speak?
Yeah, just,
Dr.
for the board, if you could, when you're looking at your calendars, just try to hold January 16th and January 29th in addition to the dates that we already have. Budget meetings. There are two potential hearing dates. One of them, and I'll explain more about this when we get closer. I'll send a communication to the board. One, I would usually ask for volunteers. And the other would be a whole board activity, so we would have to talk, the board, Tony would have to. Jen and Bill about that, but just to get it out there, see if you can hold the 16th and yeah.
Dr. Will, would these be evening
They
meetings?
would be evening, it'd be 7. The 16th may not be all of you, but the 29th would probably be everyone.
Yes. Any other points of interest? All right, moving on, student representatives report. Thanks.
Okay, so this Friday we have our ugly sweater day. And we also have a band and chorus little preview.
And then tomorrow we have DECA Alumni Day, where DECA alumni from, any year can come back and teach some of our current DECA students how they did well. And you may be able to tell by how I'm dressed, but today mock trial had a huge win over University High School, Avon High, and RAM. We won all 3 and we will be moving on to regionals. So congratulations.
Congratulations.
Any questions or concerns?
Are you ready for winter break?
Yes.
Finals, I'm sure, are crazy.
Yeah, we don't have finals until mid-January.
Amazing. So you have just testing and stuff.
Yes, a lot,
Yeah.
but very excited.
How excited was Jaden at the DECA part?
Unfortunately, I couldn't make it. Unforeseen circumstances. So, I'm looking forward to getting back there next year. So my apologies to DECA.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on, Dr. Willett. I-2 BOE goal setting.
All right, so I'm gonna stop the share here so I can blow this up as big as this screen will let me. But you all have access to this, so the screen, is not always easy on the eyes, but you can open this up through the dashboard. I sent out an email today as well. So there's a lag here too, so I'm probably gonna type on my laptop, and it'll probably show up faster than if I'm trying to use this system. So what I want to point out, just a couple of quick things. The first tab here is the highest ranked of the goals. So if you look through, I put, some of them look like they're repeated, but 6, 6, 7, 7 just means they got ranked at the same numerical level. So I did the mean, the mode, and the median, just so we could, break down if there was one that's a tie, one a little bit higher than the other. But as you may know, the median is the middle number, the mode is the most frequently repeated, or the most frequently reported score. So for instance, if out of 9 of you, 6 people had 5s and, 2 had 2s and, whatever one had 1, the 5 would be the mode. It's the most frequently ranked, number. So you'll see that, each of these came in about the same general area, but I used the mean, the mode, and the median to help us rank when things were close between each other for the mean. So you have 11 here. I saw that the first 3 were fiscal. So I
Recording in progress.
So I took a shot at merging that one. The 3 that were ranked the most highly for fiscal, I took at the at the bottom there. I merged 9, 2, and 4. So it's just throwing it out there that if you wanted the fiscal one, this one merges the 3 that were ranked the highest. And then from there on, you have about 8 or 9 left, and they range from academic to community culture, culture and community, academic, goal, community relationships, data-driven decision-making, equity, facilities, and then professional development and staff support. So the purpose of tonight is, looking at them, merging them. Usually you want to have about 3 to 5 goals and tweaking them if you want. And if you throw the tweaks out there, I would, strike things and add things however you want. The highest ranked tab, shows this piece. The rankings that for every one of these is in the rankings tab. So you can see how, the timestamp on the left symbolizes each of you. I took the names out so that nobody was, offended by anybody else's ranking or whatever the thing is. So the names are not in there; they're suppressed. But each of those timestamps is one of you. And you probably know who you are by the date that you did it, but no one else will. And if there was a data point missing, I just did the mean of the existing data point or the mode or the median of what was provided. So for instance, in the first one there, 01, there is a missing data point. So I just meaned, mode, and median the existing data points, if you don't understand that. So if you don't do it that way, obviously, then it would come in as a mean, it would factor a 0 in, which would artificially lower that ranking, and that's why it's done that way. So you can scroll across the bottom and you can see the mean, median, mode for all of these all the way through 26. I noticed that on the form 24 and 25 were duplicated. That's why they're the same, and there's a 26. So I color coded the duplicate. The yellow and the blue are the ones that made it into the highest ranked. So if you see a top column that is yellow or blue, those are the ones that are in the highest ranked tab. And then if you go all the way over to the far right tab, that's everything. That's everything anyone submitted.
Oh, yeah.
So the far right tab is basically everything you submitted. The rankings tab is exactly what the rankings were from each individual who put their stuff in. And then the highest ranked is which ones came out on the top.
All right. That being said, so what we'll now do is we'll move over to a discussion. In the interest of making sure we get it good and thorough, I'd ask you to, raise your hand. Let me call upon you to make sure that we can move around, but feel free to discuss respectfully so, but the purpose here is to get everybody's understanding and get a solution together. So we've got time due to the agenda cancellation. So that being said, who'd like to go first?
I got something that's just jumping out at me.
Go ahead.
I'm looking at the top goals, the ones that are in yellow, and draft goal number 4. talks about, disseminating pertinent updates to the community. I think that's an important aspect to have when dealing with our budget. That we have a piece in there for that one. But I see in the one that you took a shot at putting down there, we don't have anything about.
Well, it says well communicated. I just tried to find a way
Sure.
of saying it.
Okay,
So, yeah, no, but it's a very good point, which is why I put well communicated in there, just I
Right.
figured that might.
Yeah, so goals 2 and 4, I honestly, I didn't number 4. Yeah, I took number 2, which is perfect. I liked it. I just wanted to add the communication piece, so 2 and 4 are the same exact thing. I just said, let's add that in. So let's just merge 4 and 19. Like that's the goal here, I'd say, because those are the fiscal. So either way, we can clean up the run-on sentence there.
Yeah, that is the tough part, is everything that kind of goes on.
Engage.
So as far as editing that, line 14, to the point that you two are making there, is there a better way of saying well communicated? Or now that we recognize that, is that enough?
are we not going far enough by not putting something about communicating to the community in there? By just saying, well communicated, are we not putting ourselves out there enough and making it our responsibility to make sure that the community knows?
Okay.
Saying well communicated could just be putting a posting online, all that was well communicated. What about people that don't do that? Are we not going far enough by?
I like where you're going, like, I know that we have our community budget workshops. So how do we, and I don't wanna get in the weeds with this, but I'm trying to think about where our communication is to the community, right? Our workshops that Dr. Will has and how we can support that, or how we can do communication, whether it be like the superintendent bulletin or communication via, I'm just trying to think of other ways that we can communicate, but you're right, because I feel like a lot of people are either not informed or misinformed. So having their involvement, and how do we increase that involvement? So maybe increase community, I don't know, but I hear what you're saying, I don't disagree, because we have to have that word.
It's widely
Community.
communicated or communicated through multiple modalities, and that would mean, phone, it's newsletter, meetings, messages.
And I guess, so Bill, let me ask you this, speaking of, we have somebody in the waiting room. So I think if I'm understanding you correctly, obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, but the point that we're making here is, or that you're making, is not necessarily the communication, but making it clear in our goal that the target of that communication is the public.
Yes.
So somehow we can,
Sure, well communicated to the public, multiple methods, or well communicated to the public.
I think that works.
Okay.
On another thing too, because and again, I don't wanna like throw a whole bomb into this, but like communication to the community about everything and not even just the budget process. So maybe if that goal, the communication community is important to us, right? Do we make that, and I hate to like say add another goal, but maybe that needs to be something that we discuss. Because how do we get communication to the community? I don't know, I'm just throwing it out.
well,
Just spitballing.
so look at that, because draft goal 13,
Mhm.
let's kind of hold that.
I just have a question on the process.
Yeah.
So these say with 5 goals, if and when, whenever these goals get set, the 5 are locked in. How does that relate to what happens in the committee? If any of these topics are not related as a goal, can a committee move forward with, say, something that they had a niche that they wanted to do, but if it's not within the 5 goals, does it get X'd out and you can't do that?
Absolutely. If any of the committees, if something comes up that the committee feels they need to address, then they address it. What these goals are intended to be is our guiding philosophy, the things that we find are important that we're telling the public we're going to focus on, but they don't limit you from, so it shows up, you know, we may not specifically talk about transportation on here, but if a transportation issue comes up and communication needs to deal with it, then we deal with it, you do. But this is what we use to set priorities for the district, to set our, you know, the direction we want to look at when we're looking at things to put on the agenda. These goals become, you know, almost our true north.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify where that line was, whether it wasn't a set goal by the Board of Ed, to not be moved, discussed in a committee, because maybe that action isn't in alignment with the other goals that are set as the board in general versus say 3 people were sitting on a communications board or policy or fiscal or whatever. That's where I was getting it. Okay, thank you.
Jay?
I was gonna say, like, we won't let facilities go down the hole because there isn't, say, facilities. goal.
Okay,
But what it does do is it helps me know where I should focus my energy for you.
yeah, that's
So
what I'm
whatever you
saying,
do
yeah.
here, that I know these are your high priorities as a board, so usually I'll focus a lot of my energy at whatever these are. And it doesn't mean they're not getting anything. It just means that's usually where I would.
Okay.
Jim.
So-
Jen, we'll get to you next.
I think, and hopefully this helps in answering part of that question as well. I think that's another reason why a lot of these goals are more broad than you would typically make goals, you know, maybe in a workplace or something like that, because there's a lot that sort of goes under that. And so, I think that's why I like the idea of adding the communication piece and just going back to the 19, 2 and 4 combination. I like the idea of being, you know, specific. But I also want to make sure we don't exclude, you know, staff from this. I don't want to exclude students from this. I don't want, and so are they included in the public? Are staff included in the public? Are students included in the public? Like, I want to make sure we're tying everybody in. So I don't know, is this getting too specific? Or maybe the public is one goal and then maybe staff and students are a completely different goal. I'm not sure. And so hopefully that answers a bit of that question as well as my 2 cents into this piece.
Jen?
How about engage in a transparent, robust, and responsible budget process that maximizes innovation and efficiency, supports student growth, and is well communicated to the community?
Yeah.
She just sits there and words
Can you do that slower, Dr. Willett?
Much slower, but hold on, I'm going, I'm just kidding. Okay, ready?
Engage in a transparent, robust, and responsible budget process that maximizes innovation and efficiency, supports student growth, and is well communicated to the community.
Up on that. I like it.
Like it should probably include supports for the facilities as well. I mean, we have to have some amount of supporting the facilities to the degree that the operating budget does that versus capital.
Do we add a clause in between some of those commas that says supports our facilities?
And student, yeah, that's all, that was all they're saying. Like, I thought what she said was great, just there might be a little nod to, we do have to support the,
Those student environments.
yes, correct.
That's sort of where I was going with the, not, I just don't, unless we're gonna have another goal for communication, it revolving around us, revolving around, again, staff specifically. I don't know what communication goes out to students per se from our perspective, if any at all, but that was sort of why I was heading in the direction of, well, I don't want to exclude this group or that group either. And so I maybe it's what it sounds like is it might be a whole separate goal, to be honest with you. And maybe we just, instead of doing.
Overall communication.
Right, an overall sort of deal that includes everybody, but we still have this goal that focuses on the public, like knowing, the public knows that it is one of our main goals to communicate with them in effect, not just throw words to, you know, a wall or whatever, so. To that point, maybe adding a second goal, just sort of as an overall communication.
Absolutely, which makes sense. And, you know, looking through some of these other ones, you know, like we've talked about, because communication is that, you know, it's that umbrella.
Yeah.
And while it's insinuated in, you know, like draft goal 13, it's insinuated in draft goal 17. Draft goal 1 that talks about the positive relationship with all stakeholders. It's implied there that communication, but to the point I think you were making is that if communication is such a high and critical aspect of it, then it should be explicitly stated. And so you're right, maybe that is something that we want to clarify in a goal of its own, or, you know, articulate clearly in this.
Yeah, Tony, I think like the communication goal is great, but the reason why I kind of drafted the goal number 4 and spoke specifically to the communication of the budget process is because I had a feeling I was gonna be on the FFC, so it's kind of, I feel like it has to be up to like each chair as well, like how they're going to be communicating it, so if there's gonna be a communication goal, that chair member needs to know that like they now have a goal to be communicating all of their updates to the public. I didn't want to be overreaching. I'm already trying to start communicating from the finance committee, so I didn't want to sign up for anybody else.
So are you suggesting that the chair of each committee has to do the communication, or the chair of each committee gives it to the communication committee to then
That's a fair point, yeah.
point it, do that broadcast, for lack of a better term?
That'd be better.
And that's where,
Maybe that takes a little off of, each of the chair's shoulders to say, okay,
Yeah.
here's what we're doing. I'm telling the communication committee, you all handle that.
and keep in mind, you know, a lot of the deliverables that the committees will do, they'll bring back to the board for actual, not necessarily implementation, but the action, the decisions, all of that happens here
Discussion,
with the numbers.
yeah.
So, you know, if policy is working on something or FFC is working on something, that communication happens here during the, you know, the liaison committee and liaison reports. So it's not necessarily up to the individual committee chair to make sure the public's aware. It's up to the board to make sure that we transmit that.
Thanks.
Okay. Next, thoughts.
Did I just, did I get Ms. Esau's,
Jen, is your hand up
your
again? Or
contribution,
still?
if we get it in there?
Again, oh, sorry, Dr. Willett, go ahead.
Just, she had mentioned something that I'm not sure I got in the yellow. Does that sufficiently cover what you were saying?
Yeah, I think I was saying I think Tony summarized it, like, it's not up to the chair of each committee to have to worry so much about the communication piece as it is to bring it to the board. And then it goes to maybe communications once there's a resolution or a decision or this is what we're thinking, whatever that piece is, that it goes out.
Right, but in the combination of 9, 2, and 4, did I capture what you all have?
Yes,
said?
I think so.
Okay,
I think, so,
okay.
but it's just me.
All right, so I'm going to wipe out this
Oh,
these
yes.
first 3 with the one you
Yeah.
have, okay?
I like it.
Let's see, we have a little bit. Good job. Jen?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I feel like we're getting super specific as we're bringing in like the committee piece and whatnot. And from what, Jaden was saying about communication, like I looked at this particular goal as this was about budget. This was fiscal responsibility. And so I think that with every committee, we're thinking about all of our goals, but the goals are really broad for the entire board. Does that make sense? So I more look at it as like, in my opinion, we have a goal about fiscal responsibility. We have a goal about strong academics. We have a goal about, the whole student or social emotional health. Maybe we have a facilities goal, but they're not specific based on committee work. They're the entire board's goals and will be overlapping some of that stuff as we are in our committees.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so if we're good, at least for that combination, I'd like to kind of draw attention then to draft goal 13 and draft goal 1. That if the two of those could be combined to provide some sort of direction, some sort of goal as far as our passion, our directive to create that inclusive environment for the whole student community.
Maybe add 18 to that as well.
18. Okay. Thoughts? Jen?
I'd say like equity and inclusive in community, like goal number 18 is wrapped in 13 in my mind.
Can you speak up, Dan?
Yeah, so I just said 18 as well, because it's an equity goal is as categorized, which I say ties exactly in with 13, which is a community inclusiveness culture goal.
Right.
So it makes sense.
I mean, personally speaking, I'm drawn to that phrase with all stakeholders. I think Jaden mentioned earlier when we were talking about communication that it wasn't clear if we're talking to the student, the staff, the neighbor down the street. I like that there are so many different groups that have a stake in our educational process. That phrase there makes it clear that we're talking to each and every one of them. Oops, Jaden.
I would second, I would just circling back to what I did say before, is just including all, I love that word, stakeholders, because again, it does include everybody. So, second what you just said, that's all.
Is it appropriate to ask opinions of our students?
It's encouraged.
What are you guys' thoughts on all of this when we're generating goals for the next 2 years?
Yeah.
To strive for and really focus on, what are some thoughts that you guys have?
Yeah, I think that the all stakeholders thing, I like it a lot. I think it's incredibly important because, from my time on the board, I've learned that if we get too board focused or focused on like a very specific group of stakeholders, we can tend to ignore the other groups and the other people that are needed. So I think that keeping that in a higher position and focusing it on all groups is really, really good for moving forward.
Thank you.
That's great.
I think I have it as draft goal number 13.
What about it? Let me get something. Jen, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I like Dan's point of adding equitable to that statement, is a simple one, to nurture and support an inclusive and equitable community. I think that we could probably take out regardless of their identity, because if we're saying every person is acknowledged and respected, then that would include everyone. And then, I think that I forget who said it, but to bring in the staff piece, I think that if we continue with that sentence and we say this will ensure that Tolland students, we could easily say this will ensure that Tolland students and staff have the necessary resources to thrive at school in the community.
You almost have two goals there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I tried to do is take everything you were saying and put it in the combined 3 and 1 down at the bottom. Promote a just, equitable, and inclusive community where all stakeholders, let's say, are acknowledged and respected. So I tried to take those and combine them, so I'm just throwing it out there. It's easier if you look at this on your screen too, because it's really hard to see it up there.
So Jen, why don't we hold that second part, because I think as we get through this, I want to talk about goal 3, and I think what you're talking about fits in. If you don't mind, let's hold that for just a minute. Brian,
I'm okay for now.
okay,
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Something's percolating.
Yeah, it was. It was simmered back there.
I think like where 13 is going, I wish it was a little bit higher in our voting process, but I think making sure that every single person, I like where Jen was saying that regardless of the idea, you move that out and just saying all folks or whatever Jen said, she words this so much better than I. But we do need to include every single stakeholder and somehow.
Similar to what Dr. Willett did.
Correct, when we're just combining those, but I think draft goal 13, and no matter where it lands on 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, when we're looking at our goals, whether it's facilities, budget, safety, or what have you, it's making sure that every community member, whether it's student, staff, or whatever, feels comfortable being within our buildings and within the GPS family. So I definitely think making sure we're really accurate with 13. And I appreciate what you had to say, and I appreciate your candor very much. Because that's what we're here for. With all these other things like Jaden and Jen were talking about being, I don't wanna say generic, but maybe 30,000 feet. And not get super specific, but I think no matter what our goals are, they kind of all point towards 13. I definitely think that it's a strong one for us to really make sure that we're good with our communication, and we're good with articulating how we're gonna focus that, or how that's gonna be it.
Tony, with the rewrite,
Yes, sir.
we can check the box of the goal, combine 18, right? If you just read goal 18 right now, promote a just and equitable school. Now, the rewrite is promote a just, equitable, and inclusive community. Are those pretty much the same, or?
You could say school community.
School and community, so either way, it's just two very similar, because if we don't add 18 in there, they're almost identically worded.
Yeah, and that does kind of combine 13, 18. and-
Yeah. Yeah, 3 for 1. It's, just get rid of it. Let's get it going.
Other thoughts on that combination?
I know, I like nurture and support. I'm really, sorry.
No.
I like nurture, you hear my elbow crack. I like nurture support in there. I don't know how that looks.
Well, acknowledged,
Jen.
nurtured, supported, and respected. So I can say nurtured.
If you like nurture and support, just replace the word promote. I want to say nurture and support a just.
That's why I say I like it. Let's help figure it out.
If you like that terminology, does that read all right?
Yeah, say it again.
Nurture and support
Instead
a
of
just, equitable, and inclusive school community where all stakeholders are acknowledged and respected. Instead of the word promote.
Yeah,
Just
because
all stay the same.
it's really wordy too, but those are some strong words that
Jen?
thank you.
I was gonna say exactly what Dan did.
2 Ps.
Okay. Dr. Willett, did you copy that?
I did. And so take a look if that resonates with everything that people are offering here. And what I'm doing too is I'm color coding it, so the yellow is merged into the yellow at the bottom. The blue is now gonna be merged. I'll merge all those blue. And then anything else you're merging, I'll give it green or something, so you can come up with your solid 3 or 5 out of, combining these. So at the bottom, I'm formulating what your merged ones are, and I'm copying them up at the top 2 when you're done. So if you're ready, I'll move the definition you have now up to the grid blue.
Let's, I want to talk through a couple of these other than we can. So that being said, let me draw your attention then to draft goal number 3 and potentially number 17.
Yeah, I think those are pretty much the same. Do you want to also potentially try and loop in 26? Because if we're gonna foster a holistic and positive learning environment, I feel like that should be supported by a data-driven approach. So that's how, I'm not sure how else you're gonna foster a holistic learning environment without being able to track it via that data piece. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
cool.
Now, Jen asked you to hold your thought just a little bit ago. Let's bring it up here. How does it fit in to what we're looking at with Easter? Is that your pensive look?
She's on.
You're on mute.
It was me playing with a lot of boxes on my computer and not doing it well, apparently. That was what the look was. You mean my thought about, having the, a budget goal, a student goal, an academic goal?
Well, when we were looking at the combined 13, 18, and 1 just a little bit ago, and you
Yeah.
had a second part of that thought, where you were focused on, I believe, the environment of the staff and the students, the school, environment. And at the time, it felt like it might fit better into this 3/17/26 amalgamation that we're talking about here. Don't mean to put you on the spot. I just wanted to make sure that you had a chance to articulate that if it was still.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's. I know I'm rereading everything. Yeah, I think my concern with is about having something that, yeah, talks about the support of staff and students, back to that whole student, supports the whole student. So I feel like we're still missing something we need something about supporting strong academics, as well as, supporting the needs of every student and staff member.
And I think, looking at these three, it focuses on the learning environment. It talks about not just academics, social and emotional. And Brian, a comment you made before the meeting, some of those co-curricular activities.
Yes.
That in my mind, this combined goal should focus on creating that educational environment and all that encompasses the teachers, the students, the cafeteria workers, the co-curriculum, all of that fits in how we articulate there.
Uh-huh.
If you're good with the blue, I'll copy the blue to the top. Everybody kind of good with that? And then I tried to summarize 3/17 and 26 at the green, for the green, or as the green on the bottom.
What do we think about that? Does it meet the need? Does it articulate our?
One too many ands in there, I think.
Mhm.
That's your turn. We do a period at the end of supports and then add another sentence. I don't know, I'm not the educator in the room.
So just reading it, foster a data-driven, positive learning environment focused on strong academics, meaningful social and emotional supports, and that is sufficiently resourced.
See, I think that middle and, that social and emotional,
Yeah, I think you could put a comma after social and delete the and,
but
can't you?
it's one.
But
phrase,
social
social
and
and
emotional is the support, is the,
It's not social, emotional, it's social and emotional.
Yeah, the terminology is SEL.
Yeah, throw one of those in there. Yeah. Use that in 20 years.
Jen, yep, thank you.
What does sufficient?
Can we just, oh, I'm sorry, did you call on me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. We can-
Can we just add, so I like that. Can we just add like for students and staff? Maybe foster a data-driven, positive learning environment focused on strong academics, meaningful social and emotional supports, and that is sufficiently resourced for students and staff. It kind of
We
brings
want-
us back to what Dan was saying, even at the last meeting where we talk about like the portrait of a graduate, but whereas, staff skill brought into that, but it also encompasses supporting our staff in the same way that we want to support our students as well.
So I guess my question would be, and we'll come to you, is is that a place where we put stakeholders again? Or do we
Oh, I was
focus out the student and the students and staff?
repeat your question, please.
So what Jen is saying there is at the end of that, putting in sufficiently resourced for students and staff. So my question is, in place of for students and staff, do we put for all stakeholders?
I think it's important to call out staff at some point in some of this.
Raised?
Didn't get right.
What does sufficiently resourced mean? What does that mean?
I take it as having proper resources and or funding, right, making sure that there's a proper That's the way I look at it.
So I guess the key in there is in the word proper.
Or what is sufficient to somebody.
To
What's
me.
sufficient to me might not be
Efficient,
sufficient
the
to everybody else.
resource, is a resource like, okay, we have access to something, or is that money, or that can be,
Yeah.
there's a lot of gray area around what that means to one person versus somebody else.
But I guess my question on that is, wouldn't that be intentional? Because what we're trying to say here is, let's say to create the right math learning environment. The initial thought is we've got to dump money at it to solve the problem, which may not be the
Well, then
correct.
why do we have to call it out at all? If it's a goal, then obviously we're supporting it. So
Well,
why
what
do we
I'm
have to say it's
That-
resourced at all? I mean, that's, if it's the goal, then you're supporting it, and you're supporting it monetarily, and you're supporting it with whatever resources it needs to have. So why does this one say sufficiently resourced?
It's a fair point.
Where did that come from?
That's all, that was just
Great.
my question, like,
Which number was that pulled out of? Or is that just Dr. Willett should create?
Well,
that?
of three, because now that we're on the green, you can see those top three. We're always are acknowledged and respected and then,
Gotcha,
yeah.
I see it here, thanks.
So is there better wording for that?
I don't know, I'm questioning why are we calling this one goal out as this one needs to be sufficiently resourced or whatever, supported.
Yeah, because it's not in these other three, so
Right,
that's,
so
yeah. So
I think
that
it's
needs to be removed.
implied in all of the goals is that you're going to sufficiently support them. I guess that would be what I'm trying to say.
Then are you recommending that if we cut it at that last comp?
Yeah.
So foster a data-driven, positive learning environment focused on strong academics, meaningful social and emotional support.
Period.
Can I-
Or, Jen was adding maybe stakeholders, a little bit different wording.
Dana?
I think it's important that we make sure that we pinpoint social and emotional supports. And I think it's important that we pull in our students and staff, as Jen said. So, you just deleted. So foster driven, can you undo what you just did, Dr. Will?
Sure.
Sorry.
No, all he did was
Um,
take off the.
Right, I just wanted it so it helped me think of how I wanted to say what I was saying. And that is resourced for students and staff, or
Would be-
provides resources for students and staff.
Do you need to, or if I'm hearing what Jen was saying, if after that comma, meaningful social and emotional support for all our students and staff? And if we took out the resources and instead put that target audience? Jen?
I think it's a fair point. In that case, if we're taking off and that is sufficiently resourced, I think that could be its own goal, is sufficiently resourcing, making sure all of our goals are sufficiently resourced.
Isn't
I
it?
feel like that's
In the-
implied, yeah, I mean,
That's
if we're,
in the-
these are our
in your,
goals,
Point of
we're not
order,
gonna support
Tony,
them,
point of order.
you know.
Can we just take turns and follow Robert's rules and have a good conversation between Jamie and us?
Yeah, and it is a fair point. I think it's important that, number one, students and staff are mentioned. I think Jen made the point, and that Danny, you just hit on it. Students and staff are specifically mentioned. As we mentioned to all stakeholders before, this specific goal, I feel like, impacts students and staff. Therefore, I feel like we should be mentioning that specifically. That's number one. Number two, I understand your point completely about it's sort of assumed that all of these would be sufficiently resourced, but it has not necessarily been that way every year a budget has been put together, in my opinion. And so personally, I would like to see it written out as a separate goal. But I completely understand taking it off of combining, 3, 17, 26. I just would like to see that now be its own goal, whatever that may look like or sound like or read like. So that's the only part.
Yeah, I get it for brevity's sake. I mean, obviously, it is implied in all of the things, but while this is like a full board set of goals, a lot of what we do for the majority of the year is set a budget. And a lot of that budget goes to the strictly kind of academic side of things. So, and like Jen said, there's been past years where things haven't been, in a lot of people's eyes, sufficiently resourced. Some people may think yes, some people may think no. it's subjective, it's there to be subjective. But I think that while it is implied in everything, it's important to state specifically in the academic goals, because that's where a lot of the budget money will be going to.
So two things. One, just I struck meaningful, just so you could think about it. And the second thing is, if you look at the January 10th process piece, what you're doing January 10th with some of those considerations, and there's a table in there. One of them is creating the conditions for success. So that's really where, when you take the goals, what are the conditions for success for this goal? And that's when funding can be, you might set it as a condition for success. So it doesn't necessarily have to explicitly say anything about, resources supported, because in your conditions for success, you'll be talking. So,
And I know Jen has her hand up too. I don't know if that was before.
Go ahead.
Okay. What you said again, what you said about the academics, and then I think about, number 17, the whole student or the entire student. And again, I don't want us to get too into the weeds. And I know that we're educating folks, right? But having, I don't know how to say it, but like a variety of different activities and things for our students, whether it be, and again, that's not what I want on our goal, but I want us to think about it when we're creating this goal. When it comes to, extracurriculars such as like the artistic sport, the athletic sport, and those kind of things for the entire student. Because when we have these other things, then you have students that may not be strong in mathematics or in the science or in what have you, but if they have this other artistic outlet, maybe it's studies show they'll increase their grades in another aspect. So I do like the whole student part. I don't know if those are the words we want to use, but I definitely think we need to encompass that into this goal or how that looks. Because what your engineering talk is completely different than the way I talk, and the same thing with every single one of our students and every single one of our staff members. So I want to kind of incorporate that somehow.
What did Jim agree, but Brian?
I just want to highlight what Jane had said, though, in regards, like I said, I'm been here just a few meetings, but is concerning to me, or at least makes me alert to, he is just mentioning from past years that we're making sure the funding is available, resources, I think is a key thing. If he's saying it as a board member for many years, that it is concerning whether it's moving forward actually into the budget process to provide these resources, that I think maybe does need to be written down. Even if it's a one sentence goal. That's just my view of a long-term member, that's all.
Jen?
So we have a goal about budget. So I see what everybody's saying, but I think we're trying to talk about everything in each goal. And we have a goal about budget, and we said a robust and responsible budget, which would mean that we're going to ensure that we have the proper resources to have a budget that encompasses everything that we're looking to, make sure our district has. So I don't know that we need to put budget in another goal. I would more, if we're not getting what we want out of the budget goal, then maybe we need to change those words rather than talk about resources or budget again in more goals.
And I would agree, just from my perspective, I think we're gonna have a fairly challenging time on the 10th, trying to figure out what those keys to success and metrics look like for the budget one. But I do agree that what we're trying to articulate here as far as a resource allocation is already caught up in that. And if we do the first one, then that'll flow into this one. Jaden?
So just as a question then, so that would be to what Dr. Willett was saying earlier, what you just mentioned. So that's more of one of those specific things, which is how do we want to accomplish this goal? Well, we want to make sure things are sufficiently resourced. Is that sort of what you're saying there? Okay. And so I can co-sign on it. Obviously, that's a different meeting, obviously. That's 2 weeks from now or whatever it is. And so through conversation, we can come to whatever conclusion we come to. But I just wanted to ask for a point of sort of clarity. So thank you.
And that's a good point, because one of the things that I think we absolutely have to focus here, and that'll be on the tenth, is making sure that these these 30,000 foot goals that we put in place are somehow identified so that 6 months from now, 1 year from now, we can come together and say, we haven't done enough here. We haven't, how do we know that? And so that's really what we're gonna look at the tenth, is taking this and providing metrics. Okay. So going back to the statement that's there as far as the combined one in the green. Thoughts? I have to keep turning around, but I can see Jen right there, so.
Is that what we wanted to add for students and staff at the end of it?
Fair point. We did talk about adding that target there at the end after well. And I see you crossed out meaningful. What was your thought there?
Well, I just didn't think it was necessary and made the sentence longer because of course you're gonna make it, how would you?
Do not make it.
Right, it's one of those,
Imply.
but I can put it back. That's why I didn't wipe it out altogether because none of you said it. So I just struck it and to see what you did.
But does anybody have an issue with removing meaningful? Jen has an issue with removing meaningful.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I was gonna say exactly what Bill and Tony said. I was gonna say if we could add students and staff, and I was gonna say if we're going to say strong academics, then I would also like to say meaningful social and emotional supports.
Okay,
Sure. Okay, fine by me.
Jaden? You started to speak.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, then, moving on. Dr. Whibbett, if you wanna move that up into the topic you were talking about there. So looking back at the 11 that were on the high, on the top, and by no means am I saying that that's the complete list, that there's more, but it's now opening it up. What are we missing, or are we missing?
Safety,
So,
safety for our kids, a safe environment.
Just going off of safety, I mean, that could be even number 7 here, making sure that staff are trained in order to respond to certain circumstances or certain situations or whatever it is. There's multiple different avenues you can go in regards to safety. And so I do like mentioning having a goal revolving around safety, security. Wonderful.
So let's talk about it for a minute. While we're talking, Dr. Willett and Jen, can we, trying to pull out the words to put together a statement here. But I think if I'm hearing what you're talking about some of the professional development for our staff. I know Bill has previously talked about some of the building facility things and the SROs or the protective type resources. When we're talking about safety for our students, for our staff, what is that? Jen?
I was just going to say, could we add safety to and combine it with draft goal 20? So could we talk about maintaining the facilities and school properties, but also talk about safety within that too? Ensure that our facilities and school properties provide a safe environment for staff and students, something. Can we wrap those together somehow? Because if you're talking about school properties, that's a lot of where safety comes into it.
Jaden? I really thought you raised your hand.
Beforehand, I think, but Jen sort of hit the nail on the head there, just in regards to tying those together. But I still think we're missing, then again, that's January 10th, where we talk about, staff training and all that. And so in today's capacity, I do like what Jen just mentioned.
And let me clarify one thing, then we'll get to you. Is if our goal talks from a safety perspective, if our goal talks only about the facility, then on January 10th, we're not going to get into staff development for that. particular. What we have to do is make sure the goal is the umbrella that we can then work underneath. And I think, Bill, you want to have something?
Well, just a couple phrases that came to my head, the physical, the physical maintenance of our facilities and the physical safety of our people inside the facilities. So that kind of encompasses, using both physical words, I don't want anything to happen to my 4 kids that are in the schools physically, as long as they get home to me safe each day. And I also don't want a wall collapsing inside that building. So, my physical being of my kids and physical welfare of the building are important.
Yeah, just to dovetail off that, I like that. So just like something along the lines of maintaining management or upkeep of our facilities, ensuring the safety and whatever of our students and staff, something like that, just to tie those two together. But I see where you're coming from. So something around the maintenance of the facility, ensuring safety. So just to.
Jen?
Yeah, why don't we add staff training to the goal about our learning environment? Why don't we foster a data-driven, positive learning environment focused on strong academics, something about training and a meaningful social and emotional support for students and staff. Because if it's a learning environment, our staff is learning in that environment as well. We could add training there.
Yeah, so I would second what Jen just said. And I think what Bill whispered there, which the professional development of it all, which yes, impacts staff, but that further impacts students after that. So I think that fits into,
That fits better into green
yeah,
than into, what is it, some sort of gray brown?
yeah.
So I added that.
You want?
Oh, okay. Right, too strong, that is a meaningful social.
I like that.
Yeah.
Safety,
I was thinking just break.
just safety. One word, like Batman.
Can we hire them?
A lot of money.
What are we thinking? And Bill, I like what what you kind of brought up there about grabbing, both the different aspects. It's a physical one, it's a personnel, it's a property, it's everything that's included in there, ensuring that we have a safe environment for them to learn and to come home.
I like I think it's gray. Gray might be the only gray. I don't know. Yeah, okay, thank you. Like, I think
Well, now it's pretty.
now it's pink. Oh my gosh. Ensure, gotcha. Oh, see, now it's on you. Ensure that our school properties provide strong safety, security, structure, and wellness conditions for all students and staff. I think that probably hits the nail on the head.
I'm just riffing off what you're saying.
Yeah.
So there's two right now.
Yeah.
And that's the one.
It's good. I think that's a good overview.
What do you think? Safety? I don't mean to put you on the spot right there, but I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
I just think that it's a really good idea to put safety in a goal because we just very recently had a student health kind of scare. And if we have staff that are trained to even just to tell know that kids need to get out of the room, we need to call these people just to know exactly what to do in that moment. I think that's just so much more important than having those moments of freaking out first, then realizing what you need to do.
Great. That's great. And that's, you brought something up wonderfully there. When I think of safety, I'm thinking of, the bad guy at the door or damage to property. But you're right, we had a medical issue just the other day and our staff and everybody involved knowing exactly what to do is what tips that between a tragedy and just a bad day. So how we articulate that and include that in that overall, I think that's a great add.
And I'll even add to that. I mean, to start the school year at our program out in Manchester, a kid broke his arm in the courtyard. I get called to the courtyard by Jaden. A kid just broke his arm in the courtyard. other kids are gonna hear the radio. And so now that's gonna send, it's taken for granted. It really is, but then we have a training about, okay, what are we gonna say? And so on the back of my lanyard now, we've got a code 1, 2, 3, 4 to tell me the severity of it. And so those types of things are taken for granted, but I think it's an important piece to keep the peace and make sure everybody is sort of stable emotionally and physically as well, obviously. So, just figured I'd throw that. So that's a great point. Oops.
Next. Randy, you.
I got to change the setting. Oh.
Okay, so looking at what we've got down there. Ensure that our school properties provide strong safety, security, structure, and wellness conditions for all students and staff. Does that hit all of those targets?
Thanks.
Yeah,
How about if we wanted, I thought we wanted to include something that kind of touched on what Sarah said. So what if we flipped the sentence a little bit and said like ensure district safety? And then we could add into that sentence somehow, proper staff training, staff is properly trained.
well, I guess I took that wellness conditions
Okay,
to articulate that.
Right, we went through professional development in your,
Right.
in your reading, so that I kind of calibrated it there.
You have your hand up still or again? I'm sorry. Okay. So on that one, any thoughts on that? Let's take it there.
Back to the one that's still there, you're talking.
The one that's still there, correct? Not the one that has wanted to.
Yeah.
Just go with ensure district safety. There we go.
Thank you. All right,
Yeah, I'm good with that.
so then,
So if you are, you have now you have core goals.
let me ask this question. If we stick with those 4, have we hit them all? And I'm reaching into, some of the conversations, I know when you guys looked at these earlier today, you thought through it. If you're like me, my instant response was, but I said dot, dot, dot. And after we've talked about it, we've kind of molded them, we've put these together, we understand a little bit better. And we know what January 10th is going to be about. Does this cover it?
I was gonna say, these are intended to be just a big umbrella,
Yes.
not specific to everything. It's just a very broad, there's a lot of nitpicking things that fall in all these categories that don't have to be worded into them.
Absolutely. And to key in on that, we're gonna accept our goals, we're going to put our metrics on how we make sure we're doing well. And then we're gonna turn to the district and their goals fit underneath there and how they implement it. And Dr. Willett's gonna turn to his staff, and it's gonna go down to that level where finally that person in the weeds is actually doing the task that bubbles up in there. So that blows up. Our purpose is to make sure that we're setting enough of an umbrella that we're guiding them to where we end up being. Okay.
I guess the only question I would ask is at one point, and I think Jen mentioned it before, the discussion around the whole student. Are we confident that the whole student is mentioned? Not necessarily just in one of these goals, but maybe in one goal to the next, or combined in that. I don't know. The problem is, I'm not sure what piece of that whole would be missing. And so, yeah, that's the only point I have right now.
Do we not mention that in goal number 2, where we mention all stakeholders? And then in goal number 3, where we specifically mention supports for students and staff? Are we not
I'd say,
talking about the whole student in those 2 things?
I'd say more so in goal 3,
Right,
more so in goal 3, yeah. But the whole student meaning, maybe the student who's an athlete, but also an academic, the student who needs social services as well as, academic services, that's sort of more so what I'm referring to in that department. And so, yeah, I think in goal 3, we do hit on it. I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's whole student enough. I really don't know how else to word that or put it.
And my thought, I don't want to interrupt you there, but reading through these, the amalgamated, the 4 that we've got there, my feel was the whole student was the theme of all of those. Because when I look at number 1 and I see words like robust and responsible budget that maximizes efficiency, welcoming to the community. I look at number 2 and we start talking about that just, equitable, inclusive community, and we say we're all stakeholders. Number 3, we're talking about all those different things that are necessary to create that learning environment. And then number 4, we're trying to capture the student, the illness, all of those things. It felt to me like our purpose in all of these 4 was to identify everybody. So to the point where we may not have specifically said whole student, in my mind, we made it clear that that is who's important. Yeah. Jen?
Yeah, I agree with Tony. Jaden, I was thinking the same thing. I mean, I love the terminology about supporting the whole student. So I was looking it over in the same way. But I do think, especially where we're talking about a just, equitable, inclusive school community, we're talking about academics and we're talking about social and emotional support. I mean, I think without being, very specific and saying, the tennis player, I think we are trying to encompass the whole student with these goals. So although I do love that term, I think that the way it's broken down here, it does feel to me like we're capturing it.
Just to key in on something that Audrey had said earlier, I think we took to heart when we put these goals together, what you're saying about identifying one group or isolating the others. And that we did a really good job, or we're in the process of doing a good job of trying to make sure that nobody is excluded from, what our focus is gonna be.
I think that's the main thing, just making sure that everybody, all stakeholders, again, and that's why I'm going back to it. We do mention all stakeholders, so I don't know what I'm going on. But, I appreciate the conversation we've had because it sort of put that in my head there. So thank you.
Okay. So then I'm gonna ask one last time. Are we good or are we missing something?
I have one more thing.
Yeah.
Going back to the budget, goal 1 or combo 19, 2, and 4, whatever you want to call it, engage somehow we have to, because I'm going back to what the budget process is and who those stakeholders are involved. And for those of you who haven't gone through it, and again, I don't want to, people think I'm going in the weeds, but I just want to kind of feel what where I'm coming from. We have the community workshops. We have the workshops where we listen to, the athletic director. We listen to the principals. We listen to Mr. Salva and his team and all of that. So I don't know if there's some way we can add in here, engage in transparent, robust, responsible budget process in partnership with blah, blah, blah. I don't know. And resident experts. I don't know what that is, but somehow I'd like to include the partnership with the staff in that. I don't know if that's already implied in here, but I think that they're a very big part of that conversation with that. And again, I don't know how we write that, or if it's already implied, or if there's a way to add that in.
Yeah.
Is that part of the process?
Yeah.
Because I think that was existing from last year, right? So hopefully that was thought of in previous years, but communication across everyone is the process. So hopefully that captures that. Is my thought.
Yeah, I would agree, because I think that's all captured with the three words, responsible budget process. It wouldn't be responsible if we weren't talking to all of those people and we were just making the decision here amongst us. So I do think that what you're saying is captured in those 3 words.
And I just want to add one more word to what you're saying though, and that's engage.
Hmm.
You know, engage, because to the point that, you know, that they were making, those are part of the process. And where we can really help is by lending our energy to that process. You know, these budget workshops, these conversations with the community, these budget conversations, by providing the energy of the board and engaging, we're ensuring, or we're building on that success. So I think that's there.
Yeah, I don't disagree. That's what I was saying, a bit implied, but I wanted to bring the conversation up to make sure, because what I assume about it and what I see could be very different, whatever, but that's all.
All right, then, hearing no dissent, Dr. Willett, I think we've got 4 to move forward.
Great. Excellent. So this is what we will use then moving into the next stage, which is the final stage. Congratulations, you're doing a great job. We will be using a grid. You can see it in the,
Dr. Willett, I think Mr. Philbin would like that.
when you go on the Board of Ed's board goal setting site, the last stage has the grid that we'll be using for the last meeting on, for the final meeting on the goal setting, where each of those categories, you'll be considering each of these goals in each of those categories. Planning for what your expectations are, what the conditions of success are, what accountability will look like, and then building public support. And so for each of these goals between now and next time, be thinking about ways that you would be doing that with each goal, so we can come in and, you know, we can throw your ideas at the wall there. At that meeting, we'll have the attorney giving you also the presentation, so bring your caffeine because you'll be doing that probably.
He's getting into the exciting. All right, moving on then, committee and liaison reports. I'm not certain if any of the committees have met yet, but the one question I would have is, how are we doing as far as setting meeting schedules? Close.
FFC is close, so thank you.
Touch base with Dana, but I haven't heard from Bill, so.
Yeah.
You said something else. I sent you a reply to your email like a week ago.
Okay,
He asked me what times and I,
Those for curriculum.
yeah, for the curriculum, yeah. No, you said, I thought you said it was close and I said, I don't even know what times you were proposing.
so we don't need, we won't solve it here, but so we're making progress. So anything?
Yeah, FFC should be going out like tomorrow, Jen.
Perfect. Oh, so you're good.
We're en route.
There you go. Making progress.
Mhm.
All right. And moving on then to chairperson's report. And once again, under 4 pages.
Under what?
Oh, wait a second. Lisa has given me the limit of 4 pages for my chairperson's report. Shall endeavor. I can't promise, but I'll do what I can. All right. So during this past week, a friend approached me about the Board of Education goals. Why create them? The board never references them. There are no metrics to show any progress. Why put in the effort? Normally, this would be the place for a quote from an obscure philosopher, but in this case, you get me and the state statute. The 10-220, and I'm paraphrasing, starts out by saying that each local or regional board of education shall maintain good public elementary and secondary schools, implement the educational interests of the state, and provide such other educational activities as in its judgment will best serve the interests of the school district. Jumping down a little bit, it says that we shall give all of the children of the school district, including children receiving alternative education, as nearly equal advantages as may be practical. Says that we shall provide appropriate learning environment for all of our students, which includes adequate instructional books, supplies, materials, equipment, staffing, facilities, and technology. Includes equitable allocations of resources among schools and the proper maintenance of facilities. It also includes a safe school setting. This is how we start. It doesn't take a lot of effort to see in each of our goal brainstorming ideas hidden in those points of the state. It only takes a second to see the campaign promises of both parties fall within those guidelines. A glance through social media shows that our community is asking for the very same things. We start now. The goals that we're working on represent our commitment to our children, staff, our community, and to our state to fulfill the tasks that have been given to us. With the election came a basic level of trust that we must now earn. These goals explain how. Through conversations with Bill and with Jen, I am more certain than ever that this is the team that figures out how to fulfill our promises within our means. These goals will be the lens through which we achieve and measure that progress. You have my word that this will not be the last time that we hear these goals. It has been a short yet busy week. I met with Dr. Willett to get a better understanding of the Connecticut Right to Read Act. By developing a better grasp of what is on the horizon, my hope is to position the board to engage in the important conversations proactively. I also met with the town manager, Mr. Foley, a better understanding him and his philosophies on how to manage the town. My desire is to better identify opportunities for the board to utilize its relationship with the town to progress on the goals. In closing, my leadership philosophy is based on 3 pillars: direction, communication, and empowerment. Through these, we will combine the talents of the 9 individuals here into exactly what the Tolland Public School District needs to reach for more. Thank you. All right, moving on to board action, we have none. Public participation, comments must be limited to items on the agenda. For those of you online, simply raise your hand. For nobody in the audience, raise your hand. 2 minutes. Okay. Dr. Willett, once again, you have intimidated people with your time.
Making it available for everyone.
Okay, points of information. Jen.
One of the differences between this term and last term is going to be the existence of the mental health and substance abuse task force. And so in the committee liaison reports, we won't be getting those this term. And so I want to just thank the board for putting the whole focus on making sure that not just the academic side, not just the, the co-curricular side, not the, but that every sort of piece to the student is acknowledged in the goals we set tonight. And so, especially with the unfortunate disbandment of the task force, although all the work that, could have been done in that time was. So, I just wanted to acknowledge the mental health and substance abuse task force tonight, considering our goals and how I feel like we've included sort of that task force into it. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Jen?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Audrey and Sarah for their fantastic participation tonight. So thank you so much, both of you, for speaking up and having such great input.
Again, and I just want to key in, Jen, what you said there, the differences between this term and last term. And even the term before that, and the term before that, ... I was not kidding when I said in there that I have a whole lot of energy and excitement for the, for the 9 of us and what we're going to do. To that point, I want to challenge each of you to think about that and, that we don't necessarily have to do things the way they've been done. If there are ways that we can get better, we can improve, we can make more efficiencies, we can ask the hard questions, then let's certainly bring that up. I know from a leadership perspective, myself and Bill have been trying to brainstorm, and now I want each of you to help and funnel those ideas to us that we can then get them into agendas and into directions.
Yeah, Tony, sorry. Just
Go ahead, Dan.
Not sure if it's points of information, still getting used to this or future and new business, but someone in the community reached out as far as middle school drop off. Probably a future agenda item or something that's already been discussed, but just wanted to make it heard. As far as the middle school drop off, it's been a while since I've gone to middle school, so I don't know how it's currently done. Apparently, when you drop off, you go counterclockwise right now. What he's saying basically is why not go the other route, because as far as going in, going out, there's safety issues as far as we want to go one way because you're opening up a car door to let a student out on the passenger side, basically, and then it's just miserable going in and out of the school, so. As far as future,
Traffic thing, right?
as far as future agenda item, I would say that's one that we heard from the community over the last week, so. If we're able to do that, or if there's an easy answer to why we do it one way, I don't know.
Yeah, so let me just determine that this is exactly what we bring. Perfect.
Thank you.
Will, do you want to touch on that in the short term?
Yeah, they're developed by a team that includes usually police and public safety. So there's reasoning behind why they're set up the way they are, but it doesn't mean we can't consider new ways. I think thinking of it, I think that particular plan was because there's no barrier. So when people are turning left, there's no natural barrier and people were cutting, in earlier versions of this, they were cutting each other off. And it became more dangerous. So they had them take the hard left and go around because there's a physical barrier at each point. When there isn't one, there's no island or anything that will prevent someone from behind you from cutting. So it doesn't mean that they can't do something. Sometimes they'll rebuild parking lots and put physical barriers in for that reason and reorganize it. So what we'd have to do is just go back. We have a safety and security meeting coming up in a month or so. I can add that to the agenda and we can get a team together to look at that again and see if we can go counterclockwise instead of going, you want to go counter versus clockwise, or sorry, go the other direction.
Yeah, other direction, because I forget which way it is.
It's okay. No, it's good. All good. So I'll take that back to them and we'll
Yeah.
on them and start looking at that.
Appreciate it.
Say that it was a request and we'll take a look and then I'll report back to you.
Yeah, they had mentioned it just, and adding on to it, so the same thing, I responded. They had mentioned the students were having to walk in front of the vehicle, so.
Right.
That was their big concern.
I saw too, and I think there was also something about just keeping the traffic moving too. It seemed difficult. And so it was a bit of a bottleneck. But I think that was the biggest thing with the kids. They could just drop them off so they could get out on the sidewalk side as opposed to going across. But there was some other mention about the buses and I sound
Yeah, you
more
get really
complex.
into the weeds, yeah.
Yeah.
So what we'll make sure, in addition, is that we keep it on our radar so that after they've got that meeting, we can bring something back and get an update here, so that you can then get that to your constituents.
Is that something that somebody does local? Can they do a quick review of that prior to this meeting in a month instead of waiting 4 or 5 weeks for this review to happen, or what? By the safety, I don't know what the safety officer.
Well, the people that we need to have reviewing it are people that, are on that committee, and so it will take a little while. I could try to get them together sooner, but they all have
No,
schedules.
I'm saying not the people on the committee. I'm just talking about the actual guy who's gonna come into hard hat and walk outside and review the process. Like maybe it hasn't been done in 18 years.
Well, I
Are
think,
those people local, or is this something that I'm about to state?
based on what Will was saying there is that determination is done by this group, this
Oh,
committee.
all right,
Meeting in a month.
gotcha.
But what certainly, and you tell me if I'm missing it, in all my experiences at elementary school. And I see the administration, out there walking during the dropping off and looking and paying attention to, are there any safety concerns that I assume then get bubbled up? So if you can note, Dr. Willett, that there is a concern there at the middle school, and perhaps that's something we can keep an eye on until this meeting happens and we get more in depth.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's more or less, I was like, we're gonna wait 4 weeks and somebody has a concern, that concerns me. And one of our goals is safety, then we're kind of sitting on our hands for 4 weeks, so thank you.
Jen, you have an addition?
Yeah, can I just gently add that I do think a best practice is to encourage the community when they're asking questions on social media is to send an email into the board. And I have a lot of reasons for that, but in this particular situation, like given what we're talking about, if there was a direct email that came into the board that obviously includes Dr. Willett, when he has the answer, he's going to have somebody to directly come back to rather than come back to us and then go back to an old social media post and answer it on social media and also kind of get into the business of doing board business on social media. And plus, we don't all see that. And I'm afraid we'll miss questions. So again, like I understand the want to answer. I get a lot of community questions. We're all gonna get a lot of community questions. But I do think that having a direct line back to someone to make sure that all the questions that community members have are captured. And then they're in writing, they're part of the secretary's report, and also there's a direct way to get back to them to answer the question is really the priority.
The fair point. And in fact, that's one of the things I've talked with Dan, looking at, talked to Brian from a communications committee perspective. It is taking a lot of the complaints, a lot of the concerns that were formerly just going on to open discussion and directing them where we've got a community that feels empowered and confident enough to then use some of these more formalized. We've got the email to the board, we've got public participation, we've got ways of getting it in front of the whole board and getting direct that I think are more effective.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry. I was just gonna continue and just say, I think that we want the community to be as involved as possible. We want to hear from them. We want them to come to public participation or write to us. And we want to make sure, again, transparency. We each know what is communicated to the board, what we're answering back. We want to make sure that that's as accurate as possible. So I just think that, it's important just for so many reasons. And it's a way to encourage the community to keep interacting with the board rather than to just put it on a social media page that we all may not see.
No, I was just gonna kind of say thank you, because I think that's what we're reviewing next week in the legal thing, so I told the person I was gonna yeah, I'll bring it up, so should I not say anything back, or am I gonna get legalized next week? Or
But
do anything?
you're gonna learn a lot of things next week.
So just don't message him back.
I think
I
that
don't know the rules.
the good thing that I saw, and I saw that brief, is I saw multiple people come in and say, hey, here's how you communicate with the board.
Yeah.
Send an email to this. I saw somebody talk about public participation, all of those things came out there, and that's great. The last thing I want us to do is ignore the public. Because that's what we're here for, and that's critical that we're talking to them and being transparent. I just want to make sure that we guide them towards these methods, that kind of help here.
And you'll hear this more on the 10th. The thing you want to be very careful about is you don't want to have a conversation on social media. So you don't want to go back and forth and look like you're having, it becomes a meeting outside of an official meeting. It's, hey, why don't we change? That's a good idea. Well, why don't, I think let's make it this way. People respond to each other that way. It's like the same thing with not replying all. You can't interact with each other that way outside of this context, as it has an elected body.
It's also part of my responsibility when emails come in from the community to report on them here. So when emails come in, they will get brought up in our official board meeting.
Good to know.
And you'll see it not just on the 10th, but as we get into budget season. And the number of emails that we get goes up exponentially. To the best, you're gonna do everything you can to stay on top of them, but sometimes you're just not able to. And so it makes it much easier. If they're all coming in, they're getting collated, Bill can keep an eye on them, Dr. Willet's keeping an eye on making sure they go into the right place. It helps us get our hands around the holistic picture.
You'll have a lot of work to do too. So when things come up, some things you may direct to the staff and other things. So anything that's umbrella high level board, right? But if somebody says, I noticed the grass wasn't cut, over here, you might always just want to point them at the principal of the building. Because you'll have a lot of items you're trying to cover, and you're covering every single crack in the pavement and all the grass. You'll never get to the other stuff. So there's staff there for a reason too, and you can direct them to staff for some things.
I know for me, when I became a board member, my goal was to support whatever community members who possibly could, students, staff, faculty, children that aren't in the schools yet. And like you said, that safety thing, you want to get on it right away. whatever this post was, I didn't see it. So, I didn't realize you were talking about a post.
You know,
So,
no,
but my point is, so if we direct our folks to either email the Board of Ed, email one of us or all of us, email Dr. Willett. And because, as Bill said, he's gonna bring it up in his correspondence. Then we're gonna talk about it at points of information. And then maybe we can talk about it, say, hey, you know, this is a great conversation so-and-so brought up. Can we put it on future business? Then leadership's gonna talk about putting it on a future agenda. You're gonna, each party's gonna caucus and say, we want these things on future business, because that's what we see coming through on the emails and correspondence. What you are going to find, because I hear you with the safety, is we're not gonna turn like that. Unfortunately, because there is that process we have to follow to get the appropriate stakeholders involved, to get the appropriate. You know, we can't just say, hey, can we have Joe's construction come out and walk this? Although we know Joe, and Joe may say, I'll come out tomorrow. But there's different things that come through all of that process. So, I don't disagree, safety needs to be handled immediately as we possibly can. So I think the biggest thing is to get whatever proper communication, discuss it in the boardroom, discuss it via email, get it to Dr. Willett. He can get it to Mr. Sabra, he can get it to Chief Lytle and get the appropriate people involved so we can move that process quicker. I just think, sometimes that's where people get misinformed or whatever, because they think, oh, Dina, you're Board of Ed. Like I got texts in the morning of the day, is the bus canceled or the school canceled? I'm like, I get the communication just as quickly as you all. So, you know, I think having the transparent budget and the open communication to our community, guiding our community to the appropriate channels, because we're gonna get inundated with questions that may not be in our purview, may not be something that we can answer, and redirecting them to the appropriate folks. And it's hard because you want to help everybody and you want to respond to everything. It's gonna be tough to balance what that looks like and to kind of figure out what our footsteps are and how us as the board, a combined united board, with all different voices can help support that middle school problem or that TIS problem or that high school problem or that Birch Grove problem. So, or Birch Grove, whatever it might be, I don't want to say problem, it's a county. Thing, concern, opportunity. So that's something that I've learned through the process. And it's just by having good, strong dialogue and open communication and finding those steps and getting it to the right person.
Jen, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor this. I want to just make sure that Brian and Dan know, like, I don't think that they did anything wrong. In fact, I think that your inclination to want to answer and bring it up absolutely shows how much you care about the community and that you want to provide answers, and it's why people voted for you. So I just don't want you to, we're all going to do things a little bit differently. And like Tony says, I think it's great that we have open dialogue and we talk about it. But I just want to make sure that you both know that I actually totally understand you wanting to respond. And I think it's great. My biggest concern always just comes back to making sure that there's a very clean way for to be able to answer, to be able to get them the answer and get them the right answer. That's all.
And don't get me wrong, there are times I'm reading social media and I'll see where people aren't necessarily bringing something up, saying we need to deal with this, but it's an issue that I think relates to school, and I will put a message there. Here's how you contact the Board of Education to point that we can help. Send an email. Okay.
Just a point of clarification, real quick. I don't know who else noticed it, but some of you said meeting next week, and there's no meeting next week, correct?
It's January 10th, because next week would be,
Thank you, because
it's inconvenient.
so I just wanted to make sure, because I was, wait a second, I don't have anything.
3 weeks in a row.
So, no, thank you. But I will be the one.
Rest up.
Adjourn this.
All right, Jen, your hand up. What was that?
Oh, wait.
Okay.
I would just like to ditto what Jen said, because I know, like, I wasn't trying to imply anything. I know how it was my first several weeks, several months, whatever, because it's a whole whirlwind. So please ask questions to any of us, and Dr. Willett's an amazing resource to kind of find your footing. Even, Katie was asking one day, she's like, well, what do I do with these board goals? How to do this? And I said, that's a great question to ask in the meeting and have that conversation. So that's what I was just trying to say.
All right, moving on. So we have no future business. No new business yet, so I will entertain a motion for exec. Slow down, let me finish. Entertain a motion for adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, Dana.
Hi.
Dr. Bill, Warren,
Yes.
Hi.
Oh, aye. Sorry, Dan.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Jen.
Aye.
All right, then thank you all again. Appreciate it.